Hey guys, so this is False Bulls 123, and this is day 10 of our quarantine vlogging challenge. So I just kind of want to switch up the radio and just kind of try a different vlogging angle for today. So I said yesterday we talked about yoga, so today let's talk about my experience of dieting. So when it comes to food, I tend to be a bit of a hedonist, right? And so I'm not really the type of person that spends a lot of time, worrying about calories or portion sizes or any of that. There you go. Try to find the best way to do that. And so it's I'm the type of person that's like a 14th inch pizza from Pizza Hut. I'm gonna chow down on that. But that meant that for a large portion of my life, I had actually been, well, let's just say fat. I could use some sort of euphemism, but let's call a spade, and I was a chunky boy. So I decided that when I was in high school, I wanted to focus on my health. I wanted to get fit. And so I started I decided that summer, my first summer of college, I decided to do something and actually work on my fitness. Now, I should say that I only actually ever had one summer of college since it was a year and a half degree. So by the time that summer actually came along, I was graduating, not waiting for fall. Anyway, because it was only an associate's, and anyway, you don't care. I mean, you might, but that's not the point. So I thought, so when I was first starting, I went to the gym every day. I ran the treadmill, and then I ate half my weight in bad French fries at the calf. But that summer, I'm I'm going to finally do something for me. I knew a decent amount about nutrition and how fat affects the body. One, because I'm a culinary major and we literally had a class on nutrition, and two, because when I was growing up, my grandma had these you and your body books, and one of them was you and fat or something. I read the whole thing, and so I know what omentum and all this really specific information about fat was because I read a self-help book about it when I was a kid, because I'm a nerd and I'm boring. But um sorry, I'm trying to get my thoughts together. So it's I had a pretty good sense of all of that, and so I knew that probably the most effective ways that I could be dieting was simply caloric restriction. And I feel so angry mostly when it comes to things r/fat logic, which honestly is still one of my most favorite Reddit video series to this time, just because it's just so banal. But caloric restriction is the most realistic way of dealing with weight loss, in my opinion. I'll see a bunch of dumb bitches doing keto or something, and it just makes me angry. First of all, because many modern diets basically demonize bread, which anyone who has a basic high school understanding of macronutrients would understand that that's ridiculous. Bread, carbohydrates in general, can be very sinister when it comes to dieting and health food. Not because carbs are not good for you or necessary, but because of the way that we consume them. First of all, Americans tend to have a very carb-heavy diet. That is something that has always been the case. We like pastas. We like breads. We like, things to be breaded. We will be consuming carbs in a lot of different ways throughout the day. The way to combat this is not to cut out carbs completely, as nutritionally, carbohydrates are the bulk of how we get our energy. Meat provides some amount of energy, but is mostly used to develop our muscles and other parts of our body. It's for the proteins. Fat does provide some amount of energy, but that's more for insulation and additional energy stores. But carbohydrates are the main source of energy in our body. They're what breaks down the easiest and what keeps us having that quick energy we need to do our actual functioning activities. Since we're just on the topic, I do want to discuss nutrition a little bit more in this case. Another issue I have with like a lot of diets is that they don't really distinguish sugars very well. I need to specify this because if you haven't been to high school, if you haven't taken macronutrients in biology class, you might not know this, but it is very important for you to understand. Sugars are a type of carbohydrate. And all that really means is that sugars are basically that are what we consider to be sweet, but there's also a much broader category. You'll have your monosaccharides, which are things such as give me a second, fructose and dextrose, or fruit and milk sugars. So those are naturally found sugars. Then you'll have more. I'm trying to think, complex sugars like glucose, of course, which is table sugar essentially. And then you would have polysaccharides, which are going to be more thicker, more building block type carbohydrates. And those are things like starch and fiber. So carbohydrates in general are going to be the building blocks, and they're made of different types of sugars. So imagine the separation between proteins and amino acids would be essentially the thing between carbohydrates and sugars, or saccharides, if you're a biologist or a chemist. Now, we need carbohydrates mainly in our diets and all that. And so I just really hate a lot of diets that demonize that, especially keto, since you essentially stop eating bread, but then shove a stick of butter down your throat to make sure that you have enough energy to actually function. And that's just dumb. It doesn't realistically deal with your eating habits or anything. It just makes you do something gimmicky and trendy while alienating both the food you eat and the way you look at food. However, if you're thinking in terms of caloric restriction, you can have a much more healthy viewpoint of food and still have that still have the flexibility to eat the style of food you like, the food you enjoy, and that type of thing. Because we have a perception in America of diet food, of bland, tasteless, like diet everything. You have diet puddings, you have diet desserts, you have all these stuff which are low fat, low calorie, but they're not very tasty. And it's just all of this stuff to sort of cheat at dieting, and it's ridiculous. I'm kind of getting off point, but I was talking about my viewpoints on dieting and diet food and all that. So I'll tell you how I dealt with dieting. And this is from a person that has who it's not like, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist. However, I am a cook. I am somebody who for most of my life has had to have a very complex and thoughtful relationship with food. That is my life. That's something that I put a lot of thought into. So I would sort of and I've put a lot of thought into dieting and weight loss and all these things because I have loved food for one instance, but I'm also somebody who's had to deal with my weight for most of my life. This is probably the first time in my life where I have been at a healthy, normal weight instead of just being mildly overweight. So for me, I saw first of all, I didn't really worry too much about my exercise, though I will get into that later. Because with school and with work, I was living a very active lifestyle. I'm a cook, so I spend most of my time on my feet, so any food I do eat tends to be burned up for the process. This is how it is. It's a very labor-intensive industry. That being said, the first thing I did was I was thinking caloric intake. So I figured out how much should be getting based on my age and all this other stuff. And you can find a calculator online for that real nice and easy. And so it was about 3,000 calories that I should be taking in. Now, not everyone is that high. Some people are much less. Some people are a bit more. It just depends on a bunch of physical factors like age, weight, and height. And a few other things like gender and ethnicity. So whatever it's going to be good for you is good for you. Now, I figured that much, and I figured I want to eat about 28 calories a day. That would be my restriction. Now, before, when I was eating freely what I wanted, because I literally I had a food ticket for a buffet line where you can literally eat ice cream and french fries all you want. We didn't have ice cream, but we had french fries a lot. We had cookies and stuff. And so it would be normal for me to eat 4,000 calories a day, if not more. Mostly just because, it's the freshman 15 and it's just a lot of stress, a lot of food to help alleviate that stress and other such things. And so basically, I cut it down, not drastically, but a bit. And it helped me really get a better grasp on what I was eating. The way I did that is every phone that I've ever had has a health app on it. And it's simply just, it's like, having a calculator or like having a clock. It's just a simple app that tracks a lot of things. Newer ones can track things like heart rate, blood pressure, and all this other stuff, like fancy like fancy phone magic. But your basic health app is going to have a pedometer and a food calorie counter. There used to be ones online, but some of the more common ones have no longer function anymore. And I used to do that stuff in health class, but it wasn't until I actually had it on my phone that I really got into it. And so first thing I did was I started counting everything I ate, everything. So everything I drank, because liquor calories count, people. Everything I shit in my mouth, any snacks I had. The only things I wouldn't really count is anything that I would sample in class because I didn't, and that was on me, but I didn't really eat enough for that to actually count more than a couple calories because I was mostly just tasting things, and a lot of the stuff I had in class I wouldn't really be able to have a equivalent in the system. Because yeah, you can find most things using an app, but they wouldn't have something like Chef Roberts or this deconstructed carrot cake I had one time, right? Because it was sort of a unique object. And I mean, if I really wanted to find the caloric intake of that, I literally had to have twice. I had to literally burn the. Getting off topic. It's just there was really no way to enter that into the system, regardless. Though you usually can estimate a caloric value of something with the system. They allow you to use most of the apps that I've used have allowed you to actually enter in your own unique values of food items. So I started counting everything, right? And for that, I was able to sort of budget my food. I like to imagine dieting as sort of having a caloric budget for your food. So you think, I this is how much I've eaten today. This is how much I plan to eat for my meals. So it's like I can probably have that soda. I can afford that 120 calories for today. And if I go a little bit over budget, maybe I can not eat as much the next day. And so by setting yourself a healthy caloric restriction and by actually paying close attention and budgeting your food, it's pretty easy to actually see how much you're eating and deal with how much food you intake. For me, the issue is not so much with balance because I tend to eat fairly balanced meals if I just maybe I could put more vegetables in my diet, which is the case for most people. For me, a large portion of it was overconsumption. I tend to binge. I like to have a lot of fries. I would go back for seconds. And so when I was dieting, I kept myself I would not have seconds. I would have very reasonable portions. I kept down a lot, so I was eating well, but I wasn't overeating like I was accustomed to. And so it also made me really criticize and look at what are sort of additional calories that that I wasn't really thinking about. Big thing, of course, sodas, sweetened drinks. So your average soda is about, for an 8-ounce glass, 120 calories. Or 140, I can't remember off the top of my head. Orange juice, apple juice, stuff like that, about 20 calories less. You might as well just drink a soda, because all you're getting is a bit more vitamins with that. Cookies, those are about 80 calories a piece. Bacon's about 50 calories. And so, you start learning the caloric percentages of, the food you eat every day over and over again. I worked in a cafe. I worked in a buffet cafe. I worked in a cafeteria that had a buffet line. And so I had a pretty good, variety and choice of food. So I was lucky that I could tailor my diet that well. But if it was somebody else, if you're living your life and you don't have those options, it's mostly just considering food choices and trying to choose healthier options that you can within your same price point. And that can be really hard sometimes, especially if you don't have a lot of money to spend on, I guess, more healthier food. But it's just something that you have to struggle with. Everyone, food is expensive, health is expensive, but it's something we all strive for. And so with that diet in place, I began losing weight for the first time probably in my life because I'd never really focused on weight loss before. And I lost about, I think, I actually dropped pounds really quickly. I would usually lose about 2 pounds a week just because I was doing really well on my diet. And it was not hard. I was eating very well, do not get me wrong. But I was also just maintaining that budget. I was being very strict and I worked a very active lifestyle. I ate enough to keep me full, to keep me energized. But I also burnt a lot of calories. I mentioned the pedometer. I would be walking about 6 miles every single day during my job. Because I would get up in the morning, do a 5-hour class, and then I would usually work a 8-hour shift after school. So that was 11 hours of me walking and being a very physical like you know activities for about 11 hours a day. That's about half of my day. And at night when if I wasn't, give me a second. At night I was usually exercising, doing something else, so I had even more time to burn those calories. At the same time, while I was getting plenty of calories during the week, on the weekdays, I would usually not eat enough. I would actually have to, I would usually tend to undereat. And so I would usually get a notice that says, hey, you haven't consumed enough calories today, and that's not good. And so I would have to, go and, buy something to eat, or I had to, go have dinner someplace. And I could still eat at the calf. It's just, I literally spent so much of my time there. I wanted to be somewhere else for that. And so, along with dieting, which is mainly the big point, everyone focuses on exercise, but if you're trying to lose weight, really the food you consume is the big point. Because exercise can only do so much if you're shoving Big Macs in your face. I also kind of hate that and it's true, it's very accurate that fast food has a higher caloric intake and we definitely overconsume it. Especially if we're concerned with our weight. But at the same time, I always kind of dislike the assumption that somebody is fat simply because they do nothing but eat junk food and not exercise. I think sedentary lifestyle is definitely a thing, but I also dislike thinking that every fat person constantly eats potato chips and sundaes. There's many different ways that people can gain weight for a variety of different options. I think it's offensive to have just the notion that all fat people have these vastly ridiculous and unhealthy eating habits instead of simply just overeating or eating very carb-rich diets. For instance, sumo wrestlers, very heavy people, they eat very healthily, but they eat a very carb-rich diet, mostly of rice to help bulk up. So it's not a poor choice of food, it's simply the nutrition that they intake. Getting off point again though, but yeah. Basically, it's I would just I had find things to eat because I would be below my caloric intake at that point, and so some days I would literally it'd be 9 o'clock at night and it'd be hey, you need to put something in your body. So I would go to the kitchen and shove 4 cheese sticks down my throat because I'm just I needed to eat something, and I was aware of that because I was tracking all of my calories. Now with that, I want to exercise. I want to, if not increase my cardiovascular, I want to at least do something to help strengthen my body. Because I think I get enough cardio during the day. I tend to walk a lot. I do a lot of heavy lifting. My blood's pumping. But one thing I'm not is I'm not a very, I wouldn't say that I'm a very physically strong person. I'm flexible. I have a decent amount of stamina, but I'm not particularly strong in any sense of the word. I mean, besides the fact that I'm a guy, so I have some body strength, but I don't have a large amount of core upper body strength compared to my size, and that's mostly just because I'm not particularly athletic or physical. And so I can lift heavy things, I can do what I need to do for my job, but I want to definitely strengthen a lot of that, especially since being a bit of an overweight person, I've never really had much tone in my animate and stuff. So I started a strength training course, which I found out later was actually supposed to be for like chicks, but it worked for me and it busted my ass. So I'm just like, oh no, because like, what? I can't do crunches if I'm a dude? Nah. And then I actually started taking up yoga, like I mentioned before, because I figured it's something that really matches my style. It's all about stretching. It's all about core body strength. And it was just like, it was an opportunity that I've never done before. And so I started doing those at night, after work, and I really enjoyed it because with that exercise, it really helped me relax. It gave me some sort of inspiration for my weight loss. And so I think I lost about 20 pounds, which is really good. I mean, whatever you have to remember that it takes time to put on that weight. So it's going to take time to take off that weight too. And it's a matter of attrition. You have to keep going, you have to keep going, you have to be strong. And when you get there, hopefully you sort of reevaluated the way you look at food, the way that you live your life, and you can choose to make healthy habits. And I think in your life, you shouldn't always be perfectly healthy. You shouldn't always be worried about caloric intake. You shouldn't say, oh, I don't want to have a piece of chocolate cake because that's unhealthy, because you need to live a little life. I think everything's a happy medium, and you really should find a place of food that's between asceticism and hedonism. A place where you can enjoy your life but still make good decisions so that you are not the byproduct of, I guess, avarice. Of just, not avarice, gluttony. There we go. Saying the right bad word. But that was my experience of dieting. It was something that I thought I actually did pretty well. I really I had a good time with it. I approached it safely and from a healthy place. And I think that as long as you're aware and that you try to have a good relationship with food, you try to have a healthy relationship with food, then you're going to be pretty good in life. But as always, I'm not a trained medical person or a nutrition or any of that. So if you're looking for dieting or health advice on the internet, talk to your doctor, do research, find a way that is healthy and safe for you to lose weight, and also sort of try to define your goals about what you want out of that. Because that's going to really help you stay confident, keep you at a good pace and towards your actual goals, and it's going to allow you to be more healthy and happy because you're coming from a place of wanting to have personal self-improvement over some sort of societal pressure. Anyway, guys, I've been yammering on about how I ain't thick no more for about 20 minutes, and that's way too long. But I had a really fun time just talking about this, and I'll have to think of some other stuff to talk about for the rest of the week because I'm really enjoying this series of vlogs. And I don't know if all of my vlogs are going to be just around health and fitness and sort of my position with it. But, you know, I'll just chat with whatever comes to mind and hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Just let me know what type of things you let me know in the comments, if you've had any what your experience is with weight loss is, and we can go from there. I love to hear from you. I always love hearing from you guys, so feel free to comment. Anyway, it's getting late. I'm kind of getting a little bit tired, so I'm gonna head out. But this False Bulls signing off for now.